What's up, good people? So a lot of you guys are confused about the biomarker system, customizing the diet. In today's video, I am finishing up my last session with one of my private clients, and I'm explaining to him what his next 9 months of healing are going to look like. He went through the 3-month intensive of creating a baseline with the customization of the diet. He went through all the challenging deep cleansing and detoxification practices and habits that he had to form. And now, how does he test new foods using the biomarker system and customizing the diet further? That's what this video is going to cover. Leave your comments and questions down below. I'll get to all the relevant ones, and subscribe and share if this content is helping you. One of the things that we're trying to do during the 3-month system is to establish that really strong baseline. So whether that takes you 3 months, or whether that takes you 4 months to do, or 5 months, or 6 months, or 12 months, probably not, but whatever block of time it takes you to create that blueprint, that baseline, meaning I eat these foods consistently and these foods only, and I'm really good at them, and they equal this biomarker feedback directly. So we have kind of a data point that's very consistent and very much regulated, a baseline. So a couple of things to address here. What are the biomarkers and how often should you be journaling them to create that baseline? So the basic biomarkers are your sleep, your sex drive, your body fat, your body weight, your performance with your athletics or your resistance training or your VO2 max training or your cardio, basically your physical health, your stamina, your strength, your mood, your sex drive, your daily poops, your digestion, and your sleep, your creativity, and your daily energy. Those are the main biomarkers that you want to journal. You can journal them in any way that you want. You can do a spreadsheet. You can use Notion. The way that I did it is I kept a written journal, and I would just write them all down, and I'd score them 1 to 10, 1 being crappy, 10 being great. Had a great night of sleep, 9. Had a horrible digestion, lots of farting and bloating, and my daily poop sucked that day, a 2. And the amount that you need to do it is probably only between 3 and 5 times per week. And that's how you journal your biomarkers to create the baseline. Also, you should be keeping a food log so that you can correlate the food intake to the biomarkers for each month that you're customizing the diet. Step 1 is these are the foods I eat, and this is the basic biofeedback that I get. Once you're there, then we can move on and do some more things like testing other foods, like changing up the macros in a more significant way to see what the biofeedback is. When you have the baseline created, and once that baseline is created, then you have the ability using data to see if any foods that you test or any changes to the macros that you play with, how they affect your biomarkers in a very significant way. So that's kind of the key. First, create the baseline, which is, I think for you, you're kind of in that process of doing. And once that's firmly established, then step 2 would be, now I want to test foods and more significantly change my macros to see what it does to my biomarker feedback. And what that could look like is, with testing foods, you basically, and this can be very general and personal, so you kind of get to do this in the way that you want, but you'd pick a food that you're not eating that's healthy. Let's say that you haven't been eating any basmati rice. And you're like, I really want basmati rice. Okay, for once you've created the baseline for the next month, then you slowly incorporate basmati rice. You journal your biomarkers. You see if there's any shifts or anything that change from the baseline, and that way you can determine if basmati rice works or not. It's that simple. If you eat the basmati rice and the basmati rice either keeps your biomarkers the same or they slightly get better, then you know the basmati rice is a food that will work for you. If you eat the basmati rice and you see any deviations for the negative in any of your biomarkers, then you know then the basmati rice isn't going to work. And you take that same format and you can address it to any food that you want to try, whether it's fruit, whether it's vegetables, whether it's raw milk, whether it's yogurts, whether it's kefir, whether it's kombucha, whether it's salads. That's the approach. And you're just going to methodically do that throughout all of the food groups that you want to test, even things like beans and nuts and seeds and other grains. If it's a whole food, you can test it using that system. And that's really how simple it is. So we create the baseline, and then we slowly test foods, looking at our baseline data as kind of our North Star. If foods make the baseline biomarkers stay the same or get better, then it gets the thumbs up and we can add it into the diet and then start to play with it. But if the food gets added in and the biomarkers start to suffer, then we know that food's not going to work. I'll give you an example of a food that people test that might go wrong. So a lot of people want to have nuts and seeds. So they go, okay, cool. I'm going to try almonds and some almond butter. And they bring in the almonds or almond butter in small amounts, maybe a couple almonds per day. And then what they see is, oh, my digestion got a little weird. I got some bloating. I got some weird farts. The next day, my poop was a little different than it normally is. That's not good. Okay, let's give it a week to see if that balances out. All right, 3 weeks later, we're still eating a small amount of almonds or almond butter, and the same stuff's happening. A little inflammation, a little irritation in the gut, some bloating, some weird farts. Poops aren't that great. Well, at that point, we know almonds are not going to work, and we just remove them from the diet. After you've done this and worked your way through all the foods that you want to test, then that kind of creates the new place. That creates the new baseline. After, you've been doing this for a year or two, you can always test more foods again. You can always circle back to a food that didn't work before and slowly retest it, and I do that from time to time. Generally, I can tell after a week for where I'm at with the sensitivity of my body if a food's going to work or not. And it's a very quick process. And traditionally, there are foods that just kind of don't work, like sriracha or heavy amounts of coffee or really spicy foods mixed with a whole bunch of grains and kind of like rich foods. Like, can I eat them? Yeah. Will anything happen to me the next day? Not as far as my skin having a flare up or changing, but I'll have a little bit of weird digestion. And then I get back to my normal diet and I'm good to go. The question is, how much of those foods can you eat before it triggers some stuff? So it's a fine balance. Also, I think one of the things to keep in mind, diet oriented, and this is like a really key point that holds people back, is they establish that baseline, they get into a good flow and rhythm, they've tested the foods that they want to test, they're starting to have some success, meaning skin's doing pretty good, biomarkers are doing great. And then it's kind of like people will forget how much pain and suffering they were in, and they ease up. They go, oh, I'll have this coffee, and then that coffee turns into everyday coffee, and then that everyday coffee turns into a latte, and then that latte turns into two, and then all of a sudden, 2 months later, boom, a flare-up happens, and people are like, oh shit, what the hell happened? And it's like, well, we forgot the pain and suffering we went through our entire lives and why we went through this whole thing. So I always like to tell people, like, once you start having success, both with the skin and the biomarkers, that's actually the time to like do some personal inventory and recheck and be like, okay, I'm doing good. This is not the time to ease up. This is the time to like press the gas all the way down and take everything to another level. Because as you know, having a few mess ups here and there, no big deal. We're humans, but the consistency over big blocks of time is really what makes or breaks the whole system. And so if you can ever catch yourself before too many sequences of negative eating or kind of triggery things happen, then you can really have success long term. The same thing for you is the same thing it was for me, and it is for everybody. The crux is consistency over a long period of time and just continuing the trajectory. Also, for those of you guys who want a deeper look at the biomarker system and the whole healing process, including the detox schedule, the cleansing, the overall everything, I put out an hour plus long video that details the entire healing process that we use in the online course and with my private clients. And I'll link that down in the description box. Give that video a watch. It is an amazing step-by-step guide that covers all aspects of healing eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, and rosacea.